I think a lot of pizzerias, they kind of pass on the flavor of the dough. My dough has a light tanginess to it because of the starter. I mean, everyone has this that uses the Alta Cucina and the Grande, but I think the flavor of the dough really makes a big difference.
This is Dave Acocella, owner of Filomena's in Sunnyside, Queens. In recent years, his pizza has become regarded as some of the best in New York, and as someone who's tried most of the top spots in the city, I can confirm it's up there. So when Dave was willing to take me behind the scenes to show me his entire dough and pizza making process, it was an offer I couldn't refuse. The tips I learned spending the day here instantly upgraded my pizza game, and I know they'll do the same for you. So to get started, he walked me through his dough mixing process, and immediately one of the very first things he said completely changed the way I think about pizza styles.
I use a couple different types of flours. I don't know if you use the Super Nuvola. It's a great flour. It's an oat flour, but it has a nice amount of protein, which I really like. So I add a little ice to my mix because the room temperature is 81 degrees, and I'm auto leasing too, so I want to make sure that it'll sit for a little while and won't get too warm. Sometimes I'll take out the dough. It'll incorporate, but it won't settle. So I'll have to let it mix and let it sit and then mix again until it all comes together. So I do that first, and my hydration is 74% hydration on my round pies, which makes it a little wonky every once in a while. The pies won't come out perfectly round, but it's really gonna have that nice airiness to it. And the reason why it's so hydrated for a New York style, 74% water, is because I wanted to really simulate a Neapolitan and New York. Because my first job, I was making personal pies out of a wood burning oven. And then my second job, when Gino Sorbillo came into New York, I actually worked for him. And it was like a really prestigious honor for a Neapolitan American to work for a Neapolitan pizza master. And I really liked the texture of the personal dough, I mean the Neapolitan dough, but I didn't like the softness of it. I wanted to see how I could kind of manipulate it into a New York Neapolitan type of a pizza. So when you have the crust, it's a little lighter, but it has a nice crunch to it. It's not like a really hard crust like a New York style. So it's like a hybrid. And that's what I was really going for.
So this completely blew my mind. I mean, you often hear people talk about a New York Neapolitan hybrid, but the way Dave articulates it really opened my eyes. The flour he uses, the hydration, and the mixing process all resemble a Neapolitan style, but when I tried his pizza, it definitely has that New York flavor. It really is the perfect marriage between New York and Neapolitan. And this next step plays a big part in helping to achieve that.
So this is like right now, since I just mixed in the water and flour, it's pretty much like oatmeal. So in like 20 minutes or so, it's gonna really have a nice gluten pull, and you're gonna pull it out, and it's gonna be very flexible. It's gonna look more like silly putty. I love doing the auto lease though, because it's a higher hydrated dough, and you know, just that strength of the gluten just really bonds together. Oh, talk about fermentation. Let me get my starter. Holy shit.
Oh my God, it's been in the warmer room, but give me 1 second.
And this is my starter. It's pretty young, but it'll be good to go.
So this auto lease, or basically just letting your dough rest, is a super powerful tool that I would recommend using every time you make dough. It pretty much just allows time to do the work of developing gluten rather than vigorous mixing. That mixing can create friction in your dough that warms it up. It can oxidize the dough, which impacts the flavor. And really, it's just more work, especially when you're mixing by hand. Now, as Dave mentioned, they do use a sourdough starter in their dough here at Filomena, which is a great way to incorporate extra flavor into your dough. But the problem is that working with a sourdough starter can be tough. It requires some extra care and attention to maintain, and if you're not careful, it can make your dough a bit unpredictable. But Dave has come up with some clever ways to solve both of these issues in order to ensure consistency in his dough, so I'll let him explain.
So you know, the way I do the starter is a little different. I have the same container since day one, and I never clean it out. So I just leave a little residue in the container, and whenever I need to activate it, I just pour water and flour in it, and that's it. So I don't need to feed it. And this is my starter. It's pretty young.
Is it 100% sourdough, or do you add instant?
I know I add instant yeasts too, because you know you want to balance. So we're gonna do the flow test. Ooh, I can feel it right away. If it floats, it's good, and that's good right there. So that's what we're gonna use.
Obviously, you're using fresh yeast. Do you find that there's an advantage of fresh over the dried yeast? Or
I like the flavor, and I like the texture. Sometimes with an instant dry yeast, dough feels like it tears almost. It doesn't stretch. So like, all right, so here's a great example. You have fresh baker's yeast, but I crumble it up. If it doesn't crumble and it just sticks and doesn't break apart at all, that means it's old, it's no good. Don't use it. I learned that the hard way.
So this is something I would encourage all pizza makers to play around with. By using this method of maintaining a starter, using the float test to make sure your starter is ready, and possibly adding a bit of commercial yeast to ensure consistency, you reap some of the flavor and textural benefits of using sourdough while minimizing the hassle of it. Now this next step though is another huge one for home pizza makers.
Okay, this next step, I don't know if I want it on camera. I think I have to have one element that we could kind of like put aside. And you have to close your eyes. You can't even, like, you have to turn away and you can't even look.
So you still show on maybe on camera?
Yeah, not on camera.
Yeah.
Okay, this next step is another huge one for home pizza makers.
I just hope everything comes together because it's been sitting for a little while.
Just mix on a low speed.
Yeah, for like 5 minutes or so. Then I'll add in, once everything gets incorporated, I'll add in the salt and then the olive oil at the end. I like to add in the salt towards the end because the salt kind of like it tightens up the yeast, so it tightens up the dough. So I'll wait till the end to incorporate that. And then the olive oil gives the dough like a nice sheen to it. You know, like I feel like if I add that in too early, it won't be the same.
Yeah.
We're gonna let this sit for a little while because I was afraid this was gonna happen. It's not really coming together, so we're gonna wait until it kind of settles, and then we're gonna mix it again, and then it'll come back to life. But also cover it too.
So letting your dough rest rather than forcing it to come together using vigorous mixing is a huge pro tip here. It's especially useful when you're mixing dough by hand, and if you've seen my New York style pizza recipe, you know that it's a step I included there. Sometimes you'll find your dough just gets sticky and doesn't want to come together. But by giving it some time to rest, even as little as 2 or 3 minutes, it becomes a lot less sticky, easier to work with, and it'll come together much faster. In Dave's case, it was only a total of about 6 to 8 minutes of mixing at a low speed, with some resting periods in between, and the dough was good to go.
So I'm gonna ball this up and then kind of let it pancake down, then cut it. If I could just make dough and not make pizza, I would be okay with that. I love the whole process. It's a little coarse, but it's gonna pancake down. I'm trying to get to 680. Instead of like being nitpicky and getting around the dot, I can go over a little. It's okay. I'm gonna tell the boss. Now, and I learned that from Paulie G, like they had a variable of 10 grams, high or low, but I won't go any lower than 680. So like I'll go 680, 690. 684, let's do it. And then you move on, because you don't got all day. It's still tacky, so I use a little olive oil to kind of separate it from my hands. So once these settle a little, I'll throw them in the containers. No, man, once I had it set, once I had it dialed in perfectly, that I didn't touch it. I didn't want to touch it. So I did change flours from the beginning. I was using a different flour altogether, but I just stayed with the Caputo. I thought it was a better flour. I got a better result with it. But both my dough recipes I worked on way before I even opened up the pizzeria. It was one of those things that I was working at home and just mixing at home and mixing in a KitchenAid mixer and having like really horrible results and just kind of like finishing it off by hand and doing what I'm doing now, which is kind of like folding it and letting it rest and then just kind of bringing it to life. But it was one of those things that I worked on pretty much for years, and I would make pizza like every other night for years.
So this is super interesting that even someone like Dave, who's now a pro, making some of the best pizza in one of the world's most competitive pizza markets, started as a home pizza maker just like many of us. And not only that, but he wasn't even happy with the results that he was getting at first. Obviously though, he eventually figured it out. So I was super curious to know, what are his most powerful tips for making better pizza at home?
Well, you know, like, yeah, whenever I made pizza at home, I had a KitchenAid mixer. I had, you know, like just a gas oven. So like you could only do so many things with it. So what I would do, I had 2 steels, like maybe a 1/4 inch thick, and I had one for the top next to the broiler, and then one for the bottom to cook the base of it. Like, and to get it right, it's so tough. And a couple times I had a pie that looked like a Neapolitan right out of like a, but majority of the times they never came out like that. If you're making pizza at home, you should just make squares. It's just so much easier, you know? And you can have fun with it. Keep your dough mix simple. The more water, the better. But if you're going to add a lot of water to it, gradually make, you know, a mix that has more water each and every time so that we're used to that type of a dough. But put it in a tray.
So I thought this was a really interesting tip because to make a pan pizza, all you need is a pan. You don't need a special peel or a baking steel. And honestly, the results can be even better than a round pizza when you do it the right way. And let me tell you, the square pies they serve here at Philomena's are truly something special. They have a super crisp exterior with a moist and tender interior, and the crust was probably the most flavorful one I had on this entire trip to New York. So I was very curious to see how they make them, and that's exactly what Dave is gonna walk us through next. But before we see how those squares are made, I'm gonna see how much cash back I've earned from this video's sponsor, Upside. Upside is a free app that allows you to earn cash back every time you fill up your tank, grab a bite to eat, or stock up on essentials. Because we all know those expenses can add up fast, especially these days. And for me specifically, I've spent a lot of money getting my pizzeria up and running over these last few months. So I need as much help as I can get. And Upside definitely comes in handy for that. It allows me to earn significant cash back whenever I'm out and about. There are over 100,000 gas stations, grocery stores, and restaurants on the Upside app. So all you have to do is pick one nearby, claim an offer, and then pay as usual with a credit or debit card. No confusing rewards, points, or credits. It's actual money that you can transfer straight into your bank account. In fact, Upside has given back over $1 billion to its users, and some of the top Upside users are making over $300 per month. So to find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description below and use the code Charlie Anderson to earn an extra 25 cents per gallon on your first tank of gas. Or scan the QR code here to claim the offer. So thanks a lot to Upside for sponsoring this video, and thank you for your support. Now let's see what Dave has to say about those squares.
So, and I think another thing that sets us apart are the square pies that we make here, which once we bake them off, I'll show you what they look like. But and you know what, I'll make a square pie as well, so you can taste both the round and the square, because it's really important that you have to have the whole experience, not just the round pies. So these are the squares we're going to bake off. Now these are like 3 or 4 days old, so you can kind of see that it's aged because of the fact that it's not smooth. It's very open. It won't have that big of a rise, but the flavor is going to be there big time. So like the 4th day is like, all right, I'm pushing it a little. You don't want to have, sit it there on too much, because it's really, it's like when you get older, you kind of like lose that muscle strength, and like me, I'm not as strong as I used to be.
So Dave mentioned that they use a biga for their squares, which is something known as a pre-ferment. It's basically just a mix of water, flour, and yeast. In the case of a biga, at a hydration of around 50 to 60%, that's left to ferment for anywhere between about a few hours up to 24 hours, at which point it'll be added to the final dough along with the rest of the ingredients. So the idea is, as the name implies, to pre-ferment some of the flour, which helps to incorporate a lot of extra flavor into the dough, and to give the dough a more tender chew, since some of the gluten strength is broken down as that biga ferments. So that, in combination with the long 4-day fermentation, explains how he gets so much flavor into his squares. But that's only one part of what makes them great. I still wanted to know how he achieves that incredible texture I mentioned earlier, and a lot of that comes down to the way the squares are baked.
When you start baking off some squares, I have a friend who owns Lindustry, and I went to his place with my square dough. Like, he's kind of like folding and shaping it, and then he bakes it off, and it looks like a Roman. And that's what I was really going for when I made these squares, but it kind of turned into a Sicilian, which is even better because it looks so familiar to people. I just kind of wound up with a 90% square that resembles a Sicilian, but it's a little different. So I'm gonna change the temperature of the oven. Now I'm gonna change it to a square bake, which is just a bunch of fives all over the place. So this is our square we're making. This is a para-baked square, and this is the final product. This is pre-baked, and it's ready. It's like, the bride on the wedding night, it's ready.
Now, their par baking method is pretty interesting because, unlike a lot of New York City pizzerias, they don't top the par bakes with sauce or tomato water. They go into the oven untopped, which really allows them to get a super nice rise and a strong oven spring. I thought this might lead to a dry pizza, but due to the super high hydration dough and the dialed in oven settings for par baking, it really wasn't the case at all. So then when they're ready to make a pizza, they'll just top that par baked crust with their sauce and cheese and whatever other toppings they're using, and pop it back in the oven to finish it off.
All right. Spicy Mikey. It's named after Mike from Mike's Hot Honey, who so graciously, you got to see the sign, gave me a Mike's Hot Honey sign. I love it. It's the first one on Queens Boulevard. I'm so happy to have it. Mike's Hot Honey representing Queens. You hear that sizzle? My gosh. Spicy Mikey. One for Charlie, two for our guests.
Thank you very much.
And that point that Dave just made was another huge takeaway for me, because just like he combines Neapolitan and New York style pizzas with his round pies, he sort of combines Roman and Sicilian pies with these squares in order to create something unique. So as I mentioned, you get that super nice contrast between the shatteringly crisp exterior and a moist and tender interior, and a ton of flavor in the crust. I think a lot of pizza makers are sometimes afraid to experiment and come up with something unique. Of course, there's nothing wrong with mastering the classic styles, and I definitely recommend doing that, but all the best pizzas that I've had take the classics and add their own spin on them to make them just that much better. Now, although I love the squares at Filomena's, the round pies are just as good. And where we had left off earlier, Dave had balled the dough up and placed it into containers. So after a few days of fermentation in the cooler, it's time to stretch out the dough, top it, and bake it. And this is one of my favorite things, watching different pizza makers stretch dough, because there are always some super valuable tips we can learn from them.
So I'm just trying to define the crust a little, so that way I have kind of like a boundary between the inside and the crust itself. that's kind of like my guide. Just slowly open this up. I don't want to have like a thin spot, so I keep on looking as it gets bigger and bigger to see if I have a thinner spot, but I'm doing good so far. So yeah, I mean, it's all a feel thing, you know, like I want to make sure, like I don't want to have too much of a thickness on the crust, and I don't want to have too thin in the middle, so like I'll leave a little extra in the middle, so when I start stretching it out, it won't thin it out in the middle. So I'm using a soft polenta, a light polenta when I add the dusting flour. All right. So there's nothing special to my sauce. I mean, tomatoes, a little salt, garlic, and there's nothing else in here. It's just very, very simple. And this is the way my mother used to make a sauce, just like a base. And I like to have, I happen to like her crust, so I kind of like have a little bigger crust than normal pizzerias do. But I think we have a good crust, and I think it's the best part of the pie.
So it's very interesting to see how Dave's stretching method affects the final result. He was very gentle with the dough and pretty much just used his fingertips rather than his whole hand or palm, which is a more common technique with sort of traditional New York style pizzerias. So the result is a more rustic, bubbly pizza with a gently sloping crust that has a lot of air in it. So he then bakes it for anywhere between 4 and 6 minutes, and the result, well, I'll let you take a look.
All right, who's hungry? Huh? All right. So, but yeah, I crave this. This is really something that I think is really, really delicious. I mean, a nice big piece for everybody. Here you go. Enjoy.
Now, as you can imagine, after everything that went into this pizza, it's pretty incredible. The crust has a subtle tanginess from the starter, but what really stands out to me is the texture that Dave mentioned earlier. You get that super nice contrast between the softness on the inside of the crust and the crispness on the bottom. It really is the perfect marriage between a Neapolitan and a New York style pizza. But there's a lot of great pizza in the city, so if you want to see me break down some other top pizzerias in New York, along with what we as pizza makers can learn from them, you can check out that video right here. Either way, a huge thank you to Dave and Philomena's for having me, and thank you for watching. I'll talk to you in the next one.